This episode is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com, the #1 seller of games and gaming accessories. And GatheringMagic.com, the #1 resource for Magic the Gathering news and articles.
Hi, my name is Jonathan. This is my Skeleton Ship EDH deck. Okay, so this is my Skeleton Ship EDH deck. First off, we have Skeleton Ship. Not a really well-known general. He's from Ice Age. Summon Legend. He's a 0/3 for 5 mana. Not that impressive. And his ability, still not impressive. You tap him and you put a -1 counter on target creature. Really, when I first made this deck, it was more of a flavor-based deck. And it's just turned into a large smorgasbord of pirates and large creatures, and well, it's pirates is really what it is. Also, the second ability of Skeleton Ship, if at any time you control no islands, you have to send them to the graveyard. Alright, first we have the land base. You know, you have your basics lands. We have about 7 swamps and 15 islands there. Then we have the non-basics. We have very few non-basics in this deck. First off, Dimir Aqueduct. Really, it's the only one that fits our colors, but it's a good bounce land. And, I mean, just good. Then we have Temple of the False God. Well, Temple of the False God, I really don't need to explain this. You get 2 mana if you have 5 or more lands, and it's a really good mana ramp. And we have Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse. The exact same card. Search for a basic, put it into play. Then we have Halimar Depths. I like Halimar Depths. I mainly put it in here simply because we're basically looking into the ocean to see what we can find. And for this one, you look at the top 3 and then you put them back. Too bad you don't get to ponder, though. Then we have Bojuka Bog. Sometimes graveyards can get out of hand, and we just want to get rid of somebody's graveyard. I've even gotten rid of my graveyard at one point. Then we have Lonely Sandbar and Barren Moor. They're basically the exact same. They come into play tapped, they tap for their respective colors, or you can pay 1 mana and cycle them. Then we have Ghost Quarter. Pirates don't really like ghosts, but sometimes they do come in handy. And for this one's really just good for getting rid of those really pesky lands that nobody likes, such as Maze of Ith, and that's all. Then we have Tolaria. Now, most people have probably not heard of Tolaria. It's a legendary land, it taps for a blue, or you can tap it to remove banding, or bands with other creatures. Banding hasn't been shown since, I believe, Unlimited. I would have to double check that, but it just removes banding. Really, the only reason it's in here is because, I mean, look at it. It's an island. Pirates love islands. That's where they keep everything. Then we have Salt Marsh. It's another good mana fixer. It taps for blue or black. The downside, it comes into play tapped. Then we have Dire Undercurrents. Moving on to the spells. First, for this one, really it's more like just a small tributary for pirates to travel down. If I play a blue creature, I get to draw a card. If I play a black creature, I get to have an opponent discard a card. If they're blue and black, well, I get both effects. And we have Treasure Hunt. Really good card draw. You reveal cards from the top of your deck until it's a non-land, and then you draw all of them. And, well, it's a treasure hunt. What do pirates do most? They hunt for treasure. It's really amazing and really love the flavor in it. Flow of Ideas. This one is just massive card draw at some point. If you noticed before, I had a lot more islands than swamps, so I'm usually drawing more islands at that point. And at one point I can draw up to about 10 cards at some point if I have a really empty hand. Then we have Underworld Connections. Pirates love having connections around the world, and Underworld Connections is no exception. Sure, you pay life, but hey, you get free card draw. Diabolic Tutor. Sometimes pirates take their advice from otherly world sources, and for this one, well, you can basically just search up anything you want for 4 mana. Don't even have to reveal it. Trade routes, everyone loves trade, everyone loves card drawing. For this one, I basically pay 2 mana, bounce a land back to my hand, and then discard that land and draw another card. It's really good filtering for really late in the game. Then we have Beseech the Queen. It's really good tutor. Its mana cost is technically 6, but I usually always pay at least the 4 mana and the 1 black. And you really search for anything that is less than the number of lands you control, or equal to. I can practically search up almost anything in my deck with this. Then we have Greed. Well, you can never have enough, and Pirates can never have enough. I pay 2 life, I draw a card, I pay 2 life, I draw a card. It's very good. Moonlight Bargain. Sometimes you have to go out in the night to find good stuff, and in this case, with Moonlight Bargain, instant speed, you look at the top 5 cards, and then usually, when I usually play this, I only keep 1 or 2 cards, so I'm only paying 2 or 4 life. The rest of it are mostly lands or unusable cards, and I can just ship those away. Then we have the classic Treasure Trove. 4 mana to play it, 4 mana draw a card, 4 mana draw a card. It's just treasure, and I mean, there's really about it. Leyline of Anticipation. This one, the only reason it's in here is because we have another tropical island setting. It's flavor, and it gives my guys flash. Mystic Speculation. Now, we've heard of the poor man's top. This is the really poor man's top. Mystic Speculation. I like it better because you can buy it back for initial 2, and then you scry 3. Scrying is a lot better than topping in my opinion, simply because if you don't like any of it, you can shove it all on the bottom. With a top, you're just kind of sitting there looking at it going, well, I don't really want this, this, or this. Well, I take the best one. With Mystic Speculation, though, I don't like any of this. I'm going to send it all to the bottom. Painful Quandary. Pirates like giving people choices, and in this case, the choice is really, really painful. They can either discard a card or lose 5 life whenever they play any spell. This deck works mostly against aggro decks. I've seen it work against some control decks, such as Grand Arbiter, but against stuff like Kiki Jiki and Zozu the Punisher, I mean, it just really hurts them. Because when you run out of cards, well, you have to pay the 5 life. And we have Mind Shatter. I pick a player, they discard X cards at random. Mostly I'm just taking apart their entire hand. Capsize. This is probably the most flavorful card in the entire deck. Its name is Capsize. It has a ship on it. It bounces things. It's blue. And it's from Tempest. What's not to love? Not to mention it's one of the best bounce spells in the format. River's Grasp. Technically what this reads is I pay a blue and black mana and 2 other colors, or 2 other mana. I bounce a guy, then I make them discard that guy. That's really what it equates to. And, well, pirates have their enemies every now and then. They send them back, then they send them to the grave. Then we have Wit's End. Pay 7 mana, target a player, they have no hand. There are some things that are not meant to be seen. Then we have Hex. The only downside to Hex is that there has to be 6 creatures on the board, but usually if I have to kill 1 or 2 of my own guys, that's perfectly fine by me. But in a multiplayer format, I usually have 6 creatures to deal with other than my own. Then we have Evacuation. Evacuation is for those really tight pinches in which I have no guys or I have very little guys and they have a lot of guys and they just come steamrolling towards me and I just send them into the heavens. And they go, nope. Inundate, it's a slower evacuation and it's a little bit better simply because most of the creatures in my deck are blue and I pay 1 extra mana and they bounce all non-blue creatures. Against any aggro deck, that's really good. Hero's Demise. Surprisingly, I haven't seen this in many decks, and I keep wondering why. It's 1 and a black, it's an instant, and you destroy a legendary creature. And this is a legendary creature format, technically. It's one of the best removal spells for black. And it's really cheap, too. You can get it for, I don't know. Distorting Wake. We have ships blowing in the breeze, and the pirates like to send people overboard. In this case, you pay your 3 blue, you pay however much you want, and you bounce X non-land permanents. Really good for massive board wipe, if you have the mana. Then we have Murder. Well, pirates murder. There's really no getting around that. Then we move on to the creatures. Every good ship needs a captain, and this is its captain. This was the original general for the deck. His name is Ramirez DePietro. He costs 6 mana. He's a 4/3 with first strike. The only reason I changed from Ramirez to Skeleton Ship was Skeleton Ship had a better ability where it put negative counters. It basically kills tokens, and it costs 1 mana less. Ramirez, sure, he's great as a captain, but the ship just does a little bit more. Then we have our residential thief on the ship, Thada Adel. She island walks over there, she steals your soul ring, now I have your mana. And then I just take whatever I want. I take Gilded Lotuses, I take Memory Jars, I take whatever I want. Then we have Sinbad. He's not legendary, but I feel he should be. He's basically a looter for land. If I'm short on land, I tap him, I draw a card. If it's not a land, I discard it. I really only use his land ability if I know I have a land coming, or if I'm in a really, really tight pinch. Then we have Captain of the Mists. He's a 2/3, and whenever another human comes into play, I can untap him. That's really not it, but his second ability where I get to untap target permanent, that's the really fun part. Because I can untap Sinbad if I really need to, I can untap Skeleton Ship, or I can untap something of my opponent's if it hurts them. Then we have the small creatures of the sea. Spiny Starfish, another weird creature. This one's from Alliances. He's a 0/1 for 3, and I can pay a blue to regenerate him. And at the end of turn, anytime I regenerate him, I get a 0/1 Starfish token. So he creates a small little army for me of blockers, and it's really, really funny. Then we have Man of War. He's a jellyfish, and he bounces your guy. And he's a 2/2 for 3, not bad. Big Game Hunter. He's a 1/1, and usually whenever I play him, I'm going after, say, their giant general, or just some really big fatty, because most of the big creatures in this format have a power 4 or greater. It's really easy to find something to target, and the creature can't be regenerated. Hopper Bandit, he's always going to be a 3/3 for 3, so that's good enough as it is. But not to mention, he can also sneak into people's ships and hurt them for 3 damage a turn. I make him unblockable, you take 3, and then you take 3 again, and so on and so forth. Rishadan Brigand, I really love to put him in here. He was one of the first ones on the list when I made the deck. First off, his creature type is pirate, so, I mean, why not? He is a 3/2 with flying, and can only block creatures with flying. But the real fun part is when he comes into play. When he comes into play, all of your opponents have to pay 3 or sacrifice a permanent. If they don't sacrifice a permanent, they basically tap mana, and that leaves them very wide open. Or they sacrifice, most of the time they just sacrifice a land and get it over with, but it's still a human pirate. Then we have Drowned. This one's from Arabian Nights. It's a 1/1 that regenerates for 1 black. But the pirates are drowning, and, well, we need zombies to come back. Merfolk Looter. He taps, he draws a card, then I discard a card. I just basically filter through my deck. Ghost Ship. It's a really good wall. It flies, and it regenerates. And most of my deck is blue, so the regenerate cost is really, really fun. Not to mention, it's a ghost ship. Then we have the classic pirate ship. Can't attack if the opponent controls no islands, and if I control no islands, he goes to the graveyard. He's a 4/3 for 5, and the really funny part is when you can tap him to basically ping something for 1. Not to mention, it's a ship. Next we have stealing. Pirates love to steal, and this one actually I have some of the fun steal spells. First one is confiscate. 6 mana. I take your land. I take your planeswalker. I take whatever I want. If I need it, I'll take it. Then we have take possession. It costs 1 more mana than confiscate, but it has split second. So there's not going to be any counter spells. There's not going to be any reactions. They can't even top to react to activate it. Treachery. We need more troops. I'm going to steal your guy, and then I'm going to untap 5 lands. Mind control. I take one of your other big guys. He comes to my side. Persuasion. Same as mind control. I need more guys. Control magic. Well, it's one of the original ones, and for 1 less mana than mind control or persuasion, it's really good. Then we have Kukemssa Pirates. Now, they're a 2/2 for 4, and when they are attacked and they're not blocked, you can either deal the 2 damage to them, or you can have them deal no damage and just take one of their artifacts. I'm going to take your Soul Ring now. I'm going to take your Boots. I'm going to take your Greaves. I take all the cheap stuff mostly, simply because I attach it to most of my guys. Bribery. I'm going to search your deck, find the biggest guy, pay him some money. He's going to work for me now. Then we have the coup de grace of the deck. We have Piracy itself. Pay 2 blue. This turn, I can tap my opponent's lands to pay for my spells. If they're not paying blue, I'm just going to use it as colorless anyway. What most people don't know, and what's really fun, is they can tap their lands in response and have no withdrawal on it. Back when Portal came out, if people tapped their lands, they would of course get mana burned. But in this case, in this day, I mean, you can tap your lands, get no mana burn, and deny me of anything, and I just paid 2 mana for nothing. But if they don't know that, well, I get a lot of free mana. Then we have Commandeer. Commandeer, I take your non-creature spell, and it can also be free. Instead of the 7 mana, I can remove 2 blue cards in my hand from the game. And if it's an artifact or enchantment, it comes into play on my side. I wish it was eroded to planeswalkers, though. Corrupted Conscience. I take one of your guys, and he gains Infect. It's really good because I can turn a Darksteel into a Blightsteel with 5 mana. And here we have the large creatures of the deep. The Leviathans, the Krakens, the big bad monsters that no one wants to see. First we have Stormtide Leviathan. It's an 8/8 island walk, and he basically just mows face. He turns everything into an island, and nothing without flying or island walk cannot attack. Okay, next up we have Grozoth. He costs 9 mana, he's a 9/9, and when he comes into play I can search my deck for any number of creatures that with converted mana cost 9 and put them into my hand as well. Or I can transmute him once for another card with 9 mana. He's also good, like when you first look at him, he has Defender, but you can just pay 4 mana and get rid of that. Grozoth has his own side buddy, and we'll get to him in a little bit, but he's a 9/9, he's a Leviathan, he's huge. He usually smashes for a lot. And here's Grozoth's buddy, Inkwell Leviathan. He costs the same mana. Whenever I play Grozoth, I always search up Inkwell. Always, because, well, I don't think there is another card in my deck that costs 9 mana. He has Island Walk, he has Trample, he has Shroud. Tokens can't block him well. If you have an island, he gets through ridiculous. You can't take him, you can't kill him. The only thing that really kills him is a board wipe. And because he's a 7/11, he can take a lot of damage. Then we have Cataract Leviathan. He's a really big bad beastie, and he's really good in a pinch, because when you play him, you basically upheaval except for lands. You bounce all non-land permanents, and whenever he goes to the graveyard, you can just pay 7 mana and unearth him. He has haste, you swing for 5. There's really nothing that can block him at that point. And in a multiplayer game, everyone pretty much hates you if you ever land him, because everything they've played for the past turns just goes away, and the only thing left is this giant Leviathan. Then we have the legendary Lorthos the Tidemaker. He's a giant legendary octopus. He taps down 8 permanents, he costs 8 mana, he's an 8/8. He is the epitome of the largest and baddest sea creature ever. Then we have Lorthos' little brother, Rexiel. He's a 5/8. He has Island Walk, he has Swamp Walk, and if he ever hits you, then you can basically search their graveyard for an instant sorcery and play it without paying their mana cost. Most of the time, whenever I hit him, I usually dig for tutors or kill spells, or sometimes just for funsies. I like to do board wipes. Then we have Giant Octopus. Like I said, it's the flavor of the deck. It's not if it wins or not, it's just the flavor. It is a 3/3 hill giant. It's a blue hill giant, and that's about it. But it's an octopus. And it's giant. Nemesis of Reason. He's a 3/7, and he's also Leviathan. And whenever he attacks, they mill for 10. That's really about it. He has a really large backside. He doesn't deal that much damage. It's the milling 10 and the fact that he's Leviathan. He comes onto the shore, scares you, and then goes away. Deep Sea Kraken. He's pretty large, he's unblockable, and usually I suspend him because it's a lot cheaper, because you can either pay 10 mana for a 6/6 unblockable, or 3 mana suspend 9. If you suspend him though, there's a better kicker. Whenever an opponent plays a spell, if he's suspended, you can remove a time counter. And with multiplayer games, player 2 plays 3 spells, he's already down to suspend 6, so he just comes in faster. Then we have Great Whale. Great Whale is a free creature, technically. If he comes into play, you untap 7 lands. He costs 7 mana, so you basically get a 5/5 giant whale for free. Now we're on to the artifacts. More card draw again, Scepter of Insight, costs 4 mana, costs 3 mana, costs 4 to activate. I draw a card, really good. Then we have our mini ship of the deck. The original one was Skeleton Ship, he has his own thing. Then we have War Barge. This is for when we want to board up and go on land. I pay 3 mana. I can basically put any number of guys, give them Island Walk, and if the War Barge gets destroyed while they have Island Walk, those creatures have to be destroyed as well. It's a small downside, but usually giving Lorthos or another giant Leviathan or Kraken Island Walk is really good. Lightning Greaves, it's pretty much an EDH staple. It gives a guy haste and Shroud. Put it on Skeleton Ship, I can give you a -1 counter right off the bat. Crystal Ball, we need to see into the future, and we don't really have Mystic Speculation, so this is the next best thing. This is the first poor man's top, and you pay 1, scry 2 if you don't like either of them. You can send them to the bottom. Then we have Howling Mine. Fun for all. Everyone draws cards, everyone loves you, not to mention you get more treasure. Darksteel Ingot, it's a mana rock, it costs 3 mana, and it's indestructible. What's really important is that it's indestructible. Explorer Scope. Well, I really need to see more land, and if Sinbad's not doing his job, then, well, I attack with a guy, he's expendable, I need land. Not to mention, it's a scope. Dimir Signet, another mana rock. Expedition Map, this goes and gets me a land if I ever need to. And it's a pirate's go-to map for when they need to go somewhere new. Most of the time, I always search up Dimir Aqueduct or Temple of the False God. And finally, we have the Voodoo Doll of the deck. I pick a player, any damage that gets dealt to Stuffy Doll gets dealt to that player, and Stuffy Doll can hurt himself. The better part is, he's indestructible. Thank you for watching CMDR Decks. Please subscribe and favorite.